I caught my fiancé cheating with my own sister just weeks before the wedding. But instead of canceling it, I made her my bridesmaid and turned my big day into their biggest nightmare. This is my story. They say betrayal never comes from your enemies. And until 6 months ago, I never truly understood what that meant. Not until I caught the two people I loved most ripping apart the seams of my future with whispered lies and lust. My name is Elena, a 29-year-old marketing executive based in Brighton Hill, a coastal city that looks perfect in postcards but hides secrets behind polished glass windows. I always thought I had it all: a promising career, a cozy apartment overlooking the sea, and most importantly, a loving fiancé who worshipped the ground I walked on. His name was Daniel, charming, confident, with that slight stubble and stormy gray eyes that made strangers turn twice. We met 3 years ago at a company fundraiser where he was the keynote speaker. I was drawn to him immediately, not just for his looks, but for the way he made everyone in the room feel seen, including me. My sister, Sophia, was visiting me that weekend when I brought Daniel home for the first time. She was my opposite in every way. While I was the type to wear blazers and muted tones, she was fire: red lips, loud laughs, and a magnetic energy that drew people like moths to a flame. I introduced them over wine and lasagna. She flirted. He chuckled. I chalked it up to her being her usual self. That night, as I cleaned up the dishes, I glanced into the living room and saw them laughing at something on his phone. Her hand was on his shoulder. It was probably innocent, but looking back now, that was the beginning. The engagement came 8 months ago. Daniel surprised me with a candlelit rooftop dinner and a sapphire ring I had once admired in a store window months earlier. I said yes with tears in my eyes and hope swelling in my chest. I imagined a future with him: lazy Sunday mornings, shared coffee mugs, children with his eyes and my curls. Planning the wedding was overwhelming but beautiful. Sophia offered to help, even though she lived 2 hours away in West Greystone. She insisted on being by my side for the fittings, the cake tasting, the venue tours. I felt grateful. I thought, despite our differences, she loved me enough to make my big day her priority. And maybe that's what hurt the most. It wasn't one thing that tipped me off. It was a slow realization. A missed call here, a deleted text there. Daniel started pulling away. He claimed it was stress from work, but I knew better. His kisses became shorter, distracted. His phone never left his pocket anymore. One afternoon, as he showered in my apartment, his phone buzzed. I never snooped. I believed in trust. But that day, something gnawed at me, a whisper inside. I picked it up. It was a message from S. Just one word: last night. Wow. My throat tightened. I scrolled further and my world started to tilt. The texts were careful but suggestive. Inside jokes, weekend plans. Can't stop thinking about your touch. A photo, blurry, legs, sheets, his arm, her necklace. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled to the window and stared at the sea crashing against the cliffs. I wanted to scream or disappear. Instead, I waited. I waited for him to step out of the shower with that same smug grin and say, "What's wrong, babe?" But he didn't even notice my shaking hands. I played it cool. I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and let the pain carve into me like ice. The betrayal wrapped around my chest until I could barely move. My own sister, my flesh and blood, with my fiancé. I needed to confront them. I needed closure. But then another thought crept in. Slow, poisonous, seductive. No, not confrontation, revenge. Not the childish, scream at them kind. No, I wanted them to feel what I felt, to watch their perfect little illusion crumble the way mine had. But it had to be public, beautiful, spectacular, and it had to be at the altar. So I played the part. I called Sophia the next day and said I wanted her as my maid of honor. Her squeal made my stomach churn. I imagined her face, surprised, flattered, maybe even a little guilty. But she said yes. Daniel proposed we have the wedding at the historic Langford estate. Expensive, elegant, the kind of place where the air itself smelled like money. I agreed. They had no idea I knew. That every wedding dress I tried on, every flower I chose, every venue appointment I made was part of the script, a setup for the grand reveal. But then something happened. At my third dress fitting, the tailor handed me a note tucked inside my veil box. It wasn't signed. It read, "He's not the only one keeping secrets." For a second, I thought it was from Daniel, or maybe Sophia, some sort of twisted game. But the handwriting was neat, feminine, careful. My mind spiraled. Who else knew? Was someone trying to warn me or trap me? I started questioning everything. I called Sophia, subtly testing her, mentioning a weird dream I had about Daniel. She laughed it off, said, "You're just nervous, sis. Cold feet are real." Cold feet? Number this wasn't nerves. It was fire, burning slow beneath my skin, and I was ready to let it blaze. But first, I needed to find out what that note meant, because if Daniel wasn't the only one keeping secrets, then neither was I. I kept the note hidden in my jewelry box, tucked beneath a tangle of gold chains and an old charm bracelet Sophia had given me when we were kids. I reread it each night, hoping a second glance would somehow reveal the mystery behind it. He's not the only one keeping secrets. The words danced in my mind like a riddle, tightening a knot I didn't know was there. Who else was lying to me? My plan for revenge hadn't changed, but the script was beginning to rewrite itself. Over the next few weeks, I became two women. The bride-to-be who laughed during bridal fittings and sent thank you cards, and the wounded sister playing puppeteer behind the curtain. I watched them both, Daniel and Sophia, careful not to flinch when they hugged me or toasted to forever. It was like living inside a play where everyone else had forgotten their lines, and I was the only one sticking to the script. But the note had shaken something loose in me. I needed answers, and I knew just the person to help me get them: Claire Devon, my oldest friend from university and an amateur sleuth by nature. She worked in IT security and ran a blog on digital privacy. If anyone could trace a note's origin or dig through digital footprints without raising alarms, it was Claire. We met at a cafe in the city center, far from where Daniel or Sophia would randomly drop in. Claire took one look at me and said, "You look like hell." "Thanks," I muttered, handing her a copy of the note. She read it, her brow furrowing. "This is eerie. You think it's about Daniel?" "I know about Daniel," I said, watching her eyes widen. "And Sophia." Claire didn't gasp. She just stared for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "Okay. Then we're in deeper than I thought." "Wait, what do you mean?" Claire leaned in. 2 weeks ago, I saw Sophia at a hotel in West Greystone. She didn't see me, but she wasn't alone. It wasn't Daniel either. My pulse thumped in my ears. Are you sure? I'd bet my MacBook on it. Tall guy, sharp suit, black Lexus. He kissed her in the valet line. I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. Another man? Either that, or she's into real estate agents who make house calls at midnight. I stared at my tea, stunned. So she wasn't just betraying me. She was two-timing the man she betrayed me with. A web of deceit woven tighter than I ever imagined. I need his name, I said. Claire smirked. Already on it. I got a partial plate number. Give me 48 hours. I went home that night feeling less like a victim and more like a storm. Everything I'd buried, the rage, the heartbreak, the humiliation, bubbled to the surface. She was using Daniel, and Daniel was using me. And someone out there knew it all and wanted me to dig deeper. The wedding was just 6 weeks away now. Invitations had been sent. The Langford estate was booked. Sophia had picked out her bridesmaid dress, blush pink, satin, almost sickeningly romantic. Daniel remained clueless, sweet-talking his way through guest lists and song selections. Every time he touched me, I bit back the scream building in my chest. And then Claire called. I found him. Who? The guy Sophia's been seeing on the side. His name's Marcus Green. He's married. I gasped. What? Married. 2 kids. Lives in Harrow Vale. Apparently met Sophia through a charity auction last year. A married man. She wasn't just betraying me. She was wrecking entire lives like it was a sport. And then Claire dropped the real bomb. Elena, I dug through his financials, transfers, payments. Guess who's been wiring him money? I froze. Daniel? Bingo. My mouth went dry. Why would Daniel pay him? I don't know, Claire said, but this isn't some random affair. I think it's a setup. I sat in silence, piecing together the implications. Was Sophia sleeping with Marcus as a cover? Or was Marcus blackmailing them both? Was Daniel paying Marcus to keep quiet? Or to do something worse? I remembered the note again. He's not the only one keeping secrets. There was more to this than just an affair. This wasn't just about love or lust. It was a game, and somehow I'd become the pawn, but not anymore. I spent the next few days pretending I didn't know, pretending I hadn't found the ashes of my future scattered across the lives of people I once trusted. I needed to keep them blind. The performance mattered now more than ever. I smiled wider at Sophia. I kissed Daniel longer. I even posted a photo of us on Instagram with the caption, "Forever can't come fast enough." I watched as Sophia liked it within seconds. She commented, "So excited to stand beside you, sis." I nearly threw my phone across the room. The wedding rehearsal was scheduled for the following weekend, and Daniel insisted we spend it at his family's lake house in Pinecrest. Isolated, private, surrounded by woods. Perfect place to unwind with our small wedding party. When Sophia arrived, wearing a white sundress and oversized sunglasses, I almost laughed out loud. She had the nerve to show up like innocence itself. The first night, as we all sat around the fire pit sipping wine and roasting marshmallows, Sophia leaned over and whispered, "Do you ever wonder if you're rushing into this?" I turned and gave her my sweetest smile. Never. Daniel and I were made for each other. She laughed like it was a joke, but her eyes studied me too long. That night, I found her phone charging in the kitchen. Unlocked. Too easy. I didn't hesitate. I scrolled through messages, but Most had been wiped clean, except for one saved voice memo, probably forgotten. I played it. It was her voice, hushed but trembling. "I can't keep doing this. What if she finds out? What if Marcus tells someone? Daniel said he'd handle it, but I don't trust him. I think he's playing both sides. God, what if this ruins everything?" I hit stop. My hand was shaking. What exactly was Daniel planning? This wasn't just betrayal. It was a ticking bomb. And I had just found the match. As I stood in that quiet kitchen, moonlight spilling across the countertops, I knew one thing for certain. The altar wouldn't just be a place for vows. It would be a stage. And the show was just getting started. The morning after I found that voice memo, I woke up with a fire burning in my chest. They weren't just lying. They were plotting, scheming. And I had spent months planning a wedding for people who saw me as collateral damage. But I wasn't going to be their casualty. I was going to be their reckoning. Back in the city, I met with Claire again, this time at her apartment, where we could speak freely. I handed her Sophia's phone. I'd borrowed it that morning while she was in the shower. "Can you extract everything? Even deleted stuff?" Claire's eyes lit up. "Oh, sweetheart. This just became fun." 3 hours later, we had a full download. Texts, call logs, deleted voicemails, even some encrypted messages through an app I didn't recognize. Claire cracked it. The messages between Sophia and Marcus painted a chilling picture. They had been involved for over a year. Sophia had seduced him during a fundraising gala, and somewhere along the way, Marcus discovered Daniel's company was under investigation for tax fraud. Rather than report it, he used the information to extort both of them. Daniel, afraid of the scandal ruining his reputation and our upcoming marriage, had started paying Marcus to keep quiet. But here was the twist I never expected. Sophia had convinced Daniel that marrying me would protect him, that my father, a well-respected federal judge, would provide a layer of legal and social insulation. That's why Daniel proposed. Not because he loved me, because I was leverage. I remember staring at the screen, Claire's voice a distant hum as the full weight of it crushed me. My sister had traded my heart for influence. And Daniel, Daniel, had looked me in the eyes every day and built a fantasy around a lie. I stood up, dizzy. Claire caught my arm. "Elena," she said, "what do you want to do?" I looked at her. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. "I want them to feel everything I felt. Confusion, betrayal, shame. But most of all, I want them to lose everything they thought they'd gained." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You thinking public?" "Very," I said, "at the altar." We spent the next few weeks preparing. I smiled wider than ever. I hosted a bridal brunch. I cried fake tears at my bachelorette party. I even hand-delivered Sophia her custom bridesmaid robe, embroidered with Maid of Honor in gold thread. She hugged me like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't dismantled my life behind my back. Daniel was a perfect gentleman throughout. Kisses on my forehead, soft promises about our honeymoon in Santorini, even a surprise visit to my office with flowers and lunch. I let it all happen. Every move they made now was just more fuel for the fire. Claire helped me craft a plan. It had to be precise. We embedded a flash drive into the ceremony slideshow, disguised as photos from our journey. I recorded a voiceover, my voice, telling the real story, backed by time-stamped texts, voicemail clips, and even a blurred photo of Sophia kissing Marcus in the hotel valet line. I left the last frame blank with the words, "And now, you may kiss the bride." The night before the wedding, I barely slept. Not from nerves, but anticipation. I stared at the ceiling, imagining the faces of everyone I loved as they watched the truth unspool like a slow-burning fire across the screen. And then I thought of my mother. She passed away 5 years ago. She would have seen through Sophia's mask in a second, and she would have warned me. But maybe this was her way of helping. Maybe the note wasn't from Claire or a stranger. Maybe it was divine intervention. The morning of the wedding was a blur of makeup brushes, champagne toasts, and giddy chatter. Sophia was by my side, bubbly and glowing. "Today's your big day," she squealed, kissing my cheek. I almost laughed. "You excited?" she asked, adjusting my veil. I stared at her. Really stared. She looked flawless, radiant even. She had no idea her world was about to implode. "I've never been more excited," I said. "Everything's going to change after today." I meant every word. The ceremony was held at the Langford Estates Garden Hall. Rows of white chairs, blush roses, a gentle breeze fluttering the drapes. Perfection. Guests took their seats. The music swelled. I walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered like moonlight. Daniel waited at the altar, smiling like a man who thought he'd won. The officiant welcomed everyone. Sophia stood behind me, clutching her bouquet, beaming. When it came time for the slideshow, a surprise, I told them I wanted to honor our journey. The lights dimmed. Guests turned their attention to the large screen beside the altar. Soft music played, childhood photos, teen memories, our college years, my first date with Daniel, a picture of Sophia hugging me on my 25th birthday. Then the voiceover began. My voice. Marriage is built on trust, but sometimes the people closest to you can be hiding the darkest things. The music stopped. The screen went black. Then came the texts, the voicemails, the photo of Sophia and Marcus in front of the Greystone Hotel. Gasps rippled across the room. Daniel stiffened beside me. Sophia's bouquet hit the floor. My voice returned. "To my guests, thank you for coming. And to Daniel and Sophia, I think you should explain this yourselves." I turned around. The entire room followed my gaze. Sophia's face was pale. Daniel reached for me, but I stepped back. "I thought this day would be about love," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Turns out, it's about clarity." Whispers exploded in every row. I handed the microphone to the officiant. "I won't be needing this," I said. And then I walked down the aisle alone, my train trailing behind me like a banner of freedom. Outside, Claire waited in a silver car, engine running. As I slid into the passenger seat, she grinned. "How'd it go?" "Perfect," I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. 3 days after the wedding, that wasn't. I was still receiving messages. Some were from old college friends who'd been in the crowd. Some from extended family, shocked by what they'd seen. And then there were the voicemails from Daniel, long, rambling, and increasingly desperate. I didn't answer any of them. The news spread faster than I anticipated. Someone had recorded the moment the slideshow changed. The voiceover, the photo, my walkout. The clip went viral on TikTok and was reposted on Instagram by a wedding blogger. It was dubbed the Altar Ambush. Apparently, vengeance played well with algorithms. I wasn't looking for fame. I just wanted the truth to echo loudly. Sophia's world crumbled almost immediately. She was fired from the luxury skincare brand where she worked as a marketing coordinator. Their entire image built on trust and authenticity. The CEO called me personally, to apologize. I hadn't even complained. Daniel, too, felt the fire. His father cut him off financially, citing poor judgment and disgraceful behavior. I heard he was couch hopping, trying to convince mutual friends to take his side. Most didn't. Some tried to remain neutral, but betrayal has a stench that's hard to ignore. One night, while sipping wine on my balcony, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Marcus, the ex. It read, "You got them good." I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. I never replied. There were still moments, in the quiet, where I felt the sting. Love doesn't turn off like a switch. But betrayal, when exposed to daylight, begins to wither. I didn't want Daniel back, but I mourned the girl I used to be. The one who believed every smile, every touch, every vow whispered in the dark. She died that day at the altar, and in her place I was rebuilding. One afternoon, I met Claire at a book cafe near the old university. She slid into the booth with her usual chaotic energy. "You're trending again," she said with a smirk, holding up her phone. "They're calling you the Ice Bride." I rolled my eyes. "Makes me sound like a Game of Thrones villain." Claire chuckled. "You kind of are, but in a good way." We talked for hours about the chaos, the quiet, the aftermath. She confessed that someone from a podcast wanted to interview me. I declined. I didn't want a platform. I wanted peace. As we walked out, I spotted Sophia sitting on a bench across the street, alone, wearing oversized sunglasses and staring at nothing. Our eyes met. She stood slowly and walked towards me. Claire stiffened beside me. "Want me to deck her?" I shook my head. "Number, let's hear her out." Sophia stopped a few feet away, her voice small. "Elena, I know what you're going to say," I interrupted. "You're sorry. You were confused. You never meant to hurt me." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I was jealous," she whispered. "You always had everything. The grades, the attention, the love. I thought if I could just have one thing that was yours." "Then you'd win?" I asked, not cruel, just tired. She nodded. "I didn't even want him at first, but once I knew he'd risk everything for me, I felt powerful. It got addictive." I stared at her, feeling the echo of a bond that had once been unbreakable. "I was your sister," I said. "That should have meant something." "I know," she choked, "and I've lost you. I know that too." She turned to leave, then paused. "I hope someday you can forgive me." I didn't respond. Not then. Forgiveness isn't a ribbon you tie up after a mess. It's a process, a choice you have to keep making until the anger fades. As she walked away, I felt a weight lift. Not because she apologized, but because I realized I didn't need her to. I was free. 2 months later, I booked a solo trip to Italy. Florence, to be exact. I'd always dreamed of going, but had postponed it for work, for wedding planning, for Daniel. I walked cobblestone streets in leather boots and ate pistachio gelato near the Arno River. One evening, as the sun dipped over the city, I sat on the steps of Piazza Michelangelo and watched as golden light bathed the skyline. Next to me sat a man sketching in a worn notebook. He looked over and smiled. Not a flirtatious grin, just a quiet acknowledgement. "First time in Florence?" he asked in a warm British accent. I nodded, and exactly what I needed. We talked for a while, about art, travel, family. His name was Julian. He was visiting from Oxford, taking a sabbatical from teaching history. We parted ways with a handshake. But later that evening, I found a note tucked under my wine glass at the hotel restaurant. It read, "If you ever want to trade stories about betrayal and beauty, I'll be sketching in the piazza again tomorrow. Julian." I smiled, not because I was falling in love, but because, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was becoming. And that, more than any altar, any dress, any ring, was the greatest gift of all.